Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again. Itamar, it's Friday. Where do we begin? I'd like to focus on the concept of identity. The crisis that a few hours ago, whatever it was in the morning, early in the morning, the ceasefire was called here in Israel. The problem is that we're not solving the core of the problem. And I mentioned this about the corona. Okay, God brought us a terrible coronavirus, and thank God Israel has overcome it with the vaccinations, but now we were given something a lot worse, a terrible violence and attacks from within our borders, without our border. It's been a very difficult period. I've been living in Israel since I was 21 years old, and I've been here in Itamar and been through so much. And this is part of these wars we spoke about, these wars of Messiah we're going through, the pains of Messiah. But if we look deep into the issue, we have to stop with the symptoms. We have to get to the core. And until we get to Hamas, the core of Hamas, the problem, we're not going to solve them as well. We're not going to solve it. They're going to be rearming themselves and attacking Israel within a few more years. It's just a matter of time, and they'll begin to trickle or drizzle in missiles into our cities again. The first ones are the neighboring cities of Gaza, and then later into all of the country, which is a tiny country, Israel. But all these issues of the violence within and from without, they're stemming from something much deeper. And it stems from a lack of identity. When we don't know who we are, God sends emissaries from the dark side, because these are all obviously coming from these enemies of Israel, are very evil people coming around. And these husks, the evil in the world, is to remind us of who we are as a people. And it's so frustrating that you hear these self-hating Jews that are going online and literally, like mourning over what's going on in Gaza when they're forgetting about their brothers and sisters here in Israel who have been attacked, abused, and brutally by terrorism. And we are becoming the unfortunate, we're doing apartheid, and we're the aggressors and all that garbage. It's false news, it's a bunch of lies. And it comes from their lack of identity of who they are. And instead of realizing and searching their roots and getting to the core of the issue, who they are, they're doing the opposite. And they're trying to mingle into their wonderful world of progressive, postmodern world, and they're forgetting who they are. And that's going to turn around on them as a boomerang, as it already is. It's happening all over. Because only when Israel realizes who it is, our identity, our national identity as a people, then we'll be able to realize our goals and bring about true peace to the world and benefit toward a blessing to the world. It will never happen any other way. Our prophets have written it all over in stone, all over the place. What we have to do is open your eyes and read the Bible and read reality. But instead they're reading the New York Times with Mr. Friedman, right? A nice Jewish name he has, but it ends there with the terrible comparison of Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. He has political gains, right, to Hamas. It's unbelievable, the wicked and corrupt notion of his writing. But people love the style of opening up the New York Times. Well, how about opening up the blessed Torah, the blessed Bible, and see the real reality in this world, and connect to God and connect to the true message of that will return us all into our identity, who we are, and bring the world true redemption and peace and true love in this world, because the world is falling apart, it seems, and it will not return to God. So if it will not return to God, it will continue to fall apart and get worse and worse before it gets better. But of course, we're optimistic, and we know it will get better. I want to mention a quick idea in this week's portion that actually understands what true identity is all about. This week's portion has a lot of different things, a lot of different topics. But if we look at we know that the inauguration of the tabernacle was on the first of the month of Nisan. A great day. Our rabbis tell us that was a day like the creation of the universe. And this took place on the first of Nisan, as we all know. And after it was established, there was a great awakening within the princes of Israel. They wanted to bring something from their hearts. They wanted to bring sacrifice. And what was fascinating, if you read the account in the Bible in Numbers, in this week's portion, Naso, we see that every one of the 12 princes of the tribes, they were bringing the same thing every day. So what's going on? Everyone has this. No one has a what's it called? A lot of people claim, stop, worshiping God as a robot. Do something different, unique, right? So everyone's doing the same exact thing. Where is their personal identity? They're copying. Did everyone copy the first one? Oh, right. That's the question that comes up. Is everyone copying the first prince that brought the sacrifice because they brought the same exact things, which is fascinating. Why? And the question that comes up, and all the commentaries bring it down, is not only that they brought the same thing, what is the meaning of that, but why does the Torah go on to elaborate in such wordy verses to say the same exact thing over and over again? It could have made a shorthand. Just said, okay, this is what was brought by Nachshon ben Aminadav from the tribe of Judah, and every day a similar sacrifice was brought, and that's it. The same sacrifices were every day by the other members of the tribe, of the heads of the tribe. It could have saved a lot of words in the Bible. This is 90 verses here, just about. So it seems to be it's a difficulty. Why? And there are many explanations, beautiful explanations to this question, and I'd like just to focus on one beautiful one that I found by someone named Rav Gansfried. He was the one who was the author of the Code of the Jewish Law, the shorthand of the Code of the Jewish Law, and other important books like Kesed Sofer, a book about a scribe writing the Torah. And he writes something which I really enjoyed the way he put it together. And he asks the question, of course, why did the Torah have to go to such long elaboration about each of and every one of the sacrifices, saying it over and over again? And then he brings down something from another rabbi, which he wants to make a comparison. And a question that was asked to a rabbi, that why we know that the Anshe Knesset Gdolah, those were the great assembly, and when they made the official, they basically codified the prayers that we do every day. And in the prayer we say, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And in our opening blessings of the 18 benedictions, which we call the Shmona Esrei, and we say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why don't we just say it just simply, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Why do we have to repeat every time, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? So that was a question that he asked regarding our codified prayers. Why did the Anshe Knesset Gdolah codify that particular language? And he answers a beautiful answer. He says, well, is that each and every one of the children, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our forefathers, it wasn't like, okay, Abraham, he on his own reached the connection of God, and he discovered the beautiful connection. There's a God in the universe. And they, because of their faith in their father, continued the same way. But he's saying, no, it wasn't only that they had faith in their father Abraham, but they themselves were able to achieve that high level of connection with God on their own personal selves. They achieved that level. Of course, they loved their father Abraham more than anything, and he taught them, and then he gave them tremendous teaching. But they themselves were able to uplift themselves to that level, to connect to God on their own light, and to see, not only just to receive, but to know that there is God, the God of the universe. And that's why it says the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, and Jacob as well, just as Isaac. Each one of them were able to go through the intellectual and spiritual journey of being able to see there's only one God in the universe, and they personally experienced that on their own personal right. Beautiful explanation. And then he says, the same way I want to answer regarding the Nesiim, regarding the princes. What does that basically mean? He says that the verse says, it testifies that they brought their sacrifices with their same exact numbers, and weights, right? We all know the numbers, the different numbers mean different things. As Rashi brings down, explaining why what does the number 70 represent? What does the number 130 represent? Each of these numbers, they represent certain things in a spiritual way. So, but they went ahead each and every one on their own, he's saying, and they brought those same weights and those same numbers, right? And which is fascinating. So he goes on to say, and I want to quote his words, it's fascinating. He says this, Hakatuv me'idale, right? The scripture testifies to them. Ki lo heviu hakorbanot misbar mishkal mevuar machmat sheru ken me'akodmim. They didn't bring those weights and those numbers of sacrifices because they saw it from their comrade. Ela miyad kasher shamu sheyaviu korbanotayim. But the moment that they heard that they were going to bring they accepted that to bring the sacrifices, Nasi echad liyom, everyone will bring his day. He will have his special day and bring the sacrifices. Hiskilo kol achad bedato, everyone on his own accord. V'kol achad medat atzmo gamal levi korbanotayim. They said, we're going to bring these sacrifices, and it turned out to be the same exact ones. V'kivnu yachad, and together they were able to have the same exact achievement, spiritual achievement, to the same number and weight that the Torah talks about, which is fascinating. Because we know that there's very, very deep spirituality within these numbers. So each and every one of them on their own accord were able to achieve those weights and numbers, but for a different reason, which is fascinating. Each one connected to this very, very powerful spiritual connection in those numbers. They saw them, those numbers came up, and it was like a spiritual prophecy that each one had that same experience. It was the same thing as everyone achieves the connection to God on a personal level. He knows that there's a God in the universe. But of course, and here's where I want to add another aspect, and according to, again, this explanation, he's saying that everyone, as Rashi brings down the deep hints within these numbers, that's why they're able, it was something that was a very high spiritual thing to tap into those numbers. But I want to go and add another element here, and which I mentioned before, identity. And here again, when someone goes along and everyone does the same thing because they're doing it, right? That's what I call a lack of identity. It's just copycats. People have to realize that in order for us to achieve true spiritual elevation, we have to reveal our letter within the Torah itself. Everyone has a letter within the Torah. And that letter must shine like a beautiful lighthouse. And everyone has a personal connection that he's revealing when he's connecting to Hashem, right? When he's connecting to God, he has something to offer to all of us in the world. Everyone, when there's one soul that's not living up to his letter, his identity in the world, then we're missing something very important. The world is missing out on that. It's like a beautiful painting that has such beautiful colors, but it's missing a color, and the painting is lacking. So we know together all those beautiful colors make that painting. And here, each and every one of the tribes have their special lighthouse, a special letter. I thought of numbers of my own, coming up with a number. Rashi brings down the gematria of the numbers here. I thought of adding another one. If we count the number of sacrifices that were brought, it's fascinating. You count 21 of the animals were brought, for each one brought 21. Now why did I find it interesting? Because 21 is one short of the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And everyone has a letter in the alphabet. And where's the 22nd letter? That's the individual. The individual adds his own personal ingredient. That's why everyone did that same thing, but they added a special letter to bring it to 22. That everyone has a letter, everyone has their own letter in the Torah, in the Hebrew letters of the 22 letters. This concept of identity, of realizing on one hand is that we must return to who we are. Right? Everyone on one hand, we are united by the beautiful Torah and our divine service and all that. We have a lot of things that unite us as one. But it doesn't mean that we're going to be robots. It means that each one of us is going to reveal his personal identity, who we are. And that will bring a beautiful blessing to all the entire nation. The same way, each and every nation in the world has a light, has an offering to bring to the world. And it's important when the world realizes that everyone has a certain purpose and a place in the world. And they will realize that they will respect other people's place in the world. They will respect the place, for example, of Israel in the world, of where Israel stands is supposed to be a light to the nations. And people don't realize that. So they're saying, they're coming up, as we mentioned before, of that we are trying to, again, be the conquerors and the, whatever you want to call it, doing apartheid and all kinds of crazy things, right? We are the, as we say in Hebrew, the kovshim, right? They call us the occupiers. But all these ridiculous claims that are coming up, and from Jews that are assimilated Jews are the worst, that are coming up with these comments and strengthening the dark side, comes from only a lack of identity. Because again, they're trying to blur and eliminate identity, eliminate who we are. And then when that happens, and then it causes tragedy in the world. Only through realizing who we are and what our purpose in this world is, we will bring a beautiful blessing of peace and harmony to the entire universe. Shabbat Shalom, B'Saot Tovot, Yeshuot V'Nechamot.